When I think of the MX vs ATV series, my thoughts immediately jump back to playing an installment of the franchise on, I believe it was the PSP, if I recall correctly. I think it might have been Unleashed, and just having so much fun on it. It was a game that didn't take itself too seriously. It wasn't even trying to compete with, the bigger names. And likewise now, this game isn't trying to do that either. Now, it is available on multiple consoles, Xbox, PlayStation, PC, etc. And of course you can find a number of those different price brackets online. And of course I want to thank THQ Nordic, incidentally, for providing me the early access code to give this review to you before release date. Now, to me, one of the things I like about what THQ Nordic and Rainbow Studios do with a number of the games that I've reviewed with them, of course you can find those here on the channel, is that they are kind of a throwback to, in my opinion, kind of the mid to late 2000s-ish, wherein there were many, many more games that were just about fun. They weren't trying to be the most serious or the most realistic thing around. They were just about enjoying a particular specialised form of motorsport or extreme sport. So just take some of the examples that I mentioned. This game, when I reviewed, of course, a couple of Monster Jam Steel Titans games that they did, the racing truck game, which they made as well. It's these different pocket niche communities and fandoms which those larger games like Assetto Corsa, Forza, Gran Turismo, Project Cars, they don't really cater to. They might dip their toe in here and there, but they really don't go all in on that kind of thing. And this game, of course, has the added, what would you call it, the added niche, I guess, the added gimmick, if you want to call it that, of having two very different approaches to driving and riding, that being bikes and four-wheelers. Now for me, I'm more of a car guy than a bike guy, but when it comes to these games, I prefer bikes. So to me, this game is, I'm going to say straight off the bat, not something which I would mark down as an essential rival or an absolutely essential purchase for somebody who wants the absolute latest and greatest in every way. Physics, graphics, esports, all of that kind of stuff. This is a throwback. That is what you need to have at the forefront of your mind. Just like the other games which I've reviewed from them, it's the kind of game that appeals to someone like me. Maybe even more so if you're in your 20s, for example. Mid to later 20s certainly, maybe even 30s or older. You're going to be in the sweet spot, I think, for a game like this. And maybe even for some younger players, it might introduce you to a kind of gameplay which you really don't see as much anymore, because of games like Forza and Gran Turismo focusing in more on the esports, the FIA stuff, all that kind of thing, which is all well and good if you're into that, but sometimes some of us just want to play on your own and have fun. That's what a game like this is geared toward. Now, in terms of physics, I will say, for me, it's a little bit of a mixed bag. You'll see me on an ATV, you'll see me on a motocross bike. I will definitely say it seems like there's been just a little bit more effort put into the bikes than there is into the all-terrain quads. Now, some of that, I believe, is due to the restrictions of the vehicle itself, because for those of you who drive cars and ride motorcycles, as I do, they are very different in terms of how you pilot them even down a normal road. With a bike, it's much more about the movement of your own body as much as it is the movement of the handlebars, whereas with a car, you just sit there and steer for the most part. That is a disadvantage when it comes to quads because you've got that four-wheel stability. Stability, of course, being a controversial thing when it comes to quad bikes, but you know what I mean. So you take a quad over a jump in this game, you start flipping it around, it feels much more cumbersome. On a bike, it feels like it's what the game is supposed to be. It feels fluid, you can throw the bike, sometimes literally through corners. I will say, probably my favourite thing about reviewing this, because it's been so long since I last played one of these games, is that last time I played it, back on the PSP, there was no POV camera. There was no rider's or driver's eye view. That is here, as well as a number of other interesting camera angles, and I love that. It's so much fun. In fact, more fun than chase cam, which is usually my preference in 99% of cases. Getting on a dirt bike and taking it over jumps, throwing it through corners, with how active the camera feels, wherein it could have easily been messed up. It could have been just a static camera, Gran Turismo style, which doesn't move around that much. It doesn't do that. It feels super fluid. And I would actually say, as weird as this may sound, even though I mentioned that the game isn't necessarily the top of most people's lists for realism, I will say that for the POV camera alone on the motocross bikes, it might actually be one of the most realistic camera angles, if you will, camera setups I've seen to represent a motorcycle. You actually do feel like you're on a bike, and the key reason why is because the camera moves around. It makes you feel like you're moving around in the seat and shifting your weight on the bike. So many games don't even bother to try and do that, and trust me, it makes all the difference. And you can probably see some of that difference here in the video when I include some of that footage. Now, I will say that in terms of longevity and how much you keep playing a game like this, that is mostly where your mileage will vary. I could see this being the kind of game that somebody could be thinking, okay, I'm bored with playing these mainstream racing games, I'm bored with the esports, I'm bored with people not being able to drive in online lobbies, I just want to try something completely different that's just stupid, silly fun, that doesn't take itself too seriously, maybe has AI that's just a little bit too good, just a little bit OP, like an arcade game used to be, and just give it a try. That is the kind of person who I think should check out this game. Like I said earlier, definitely not an essential purchase for everyone, but if that sounds like it's even remotely in your kind of wheelhouse, I think you actually could have a lot of fun here. In fact, even in the time that I was playing it, and I'm sure others who have done similar reviews to me as well in this early access format may even agree with me that this game feels more fun, even straight off the bat, than for example Monster Jam did for me, or the truck racing game. I love those on the surface and there is plenty to like in the game, but this just immediately feels more fun, more happy-go-lucky, more free. Maybe that's just me, but I could see other people potentially agreeing with me as well. Of course, this one is a legendary franchise, a crossover between two series originally, and it's great to see that it's still around. So that's pretty much it for my review. I think that any in-depth stuff is probably going to be a little bit more irrelevant for most people. You know, oh, can you tune this particular, tyre pressure? Can you tune the suspension setup on your ATV? That stuff is in there, but I think a lot of us probably just here for the fun first, and then all of that stuff is kind of an addition. You'll see some of that touched on here in the video, and doubtless if you are looking for reviews of this game, I'm probably not the only person whose review you're watching anyway. So for the sake of not repeating what anyone else may have already said, that's it for my thoughts overall, and to me, those are the thoughts that I wanted to put across the most. Not necessarily getting down into the most technical details and options menus and all that kind of stuff, but the overall vibe of the game, because to me that is what these games offer the best. They are never going to compete with those top tier racers, motorsport games of multiple types on an academic level. They simply can't compete, because again, they're not trying to. What they can compete on is fun, and having an engaging, enjoyable time. So that's it for my thoughts on MX vs ATV Legends, and of course thank you once again to THQ Nordic for providing the code for the game. So give me your thoughts down below. Are you planning to buy the game, pick it up, maybe get it a bit later, and were you an existing fan of the series as I was as well? But tell me all that down below. Of course, check out my other game reviews, of which there are quite a few in the playlist here on screen, and until next time I'll see you then. But for now, as always, thanks for watching.